At the dawn of the millennium, the nation collapsed. At 15% unemployment, 10 million were out of work. 800,000 students boycotted school, and juvenile crime rates soared. Adults had lost all confidence, and now, fearing the youth, they eventually passed the Millennium Educational Reform Act, aka the BR Act. This is Battle Royale.
If the majority of people who know this film know it because of the soapboxing of one Quentin Tarantino describing it as one of the best films of the last 2 decades that he's seen, I think this is a little bit of grandstanding, and I think it's an exaggeration of the strength of this film. But after seeing this film again the first time in 15, 20 years, I will say that it is a powerful film and it's making a statement. Maybe it's because the world is rapidly moving towards this type of illogical life. This kind of this world that we're entering into. You're seeing a kind of grandstanding bravado male buffoonery on an epic level. So much so that today, May 7th, our President of the United States here has talked about reopening Alcatraz prison, which for me sounds like one of the more moronic things that he's said in the past 10 years, but is no longer something that we can just be dismissive of. That being said, I was really I was watching this film trying to understand and determine whether or not the violence in the film is gratuitous, exaggerated, and exploitative. And I'm not sure if it is or isn't. I'm not sure if that's even the point. So I'm really conflicted when it comes to this movie. I'm not really sure how to read this movie, whether it's a parable that uses the violence as a means of showing us who we are, or showing us where we're going, or 2000 to 2025, where we actually have arrived, or inching towards. But I think at the end of this conversation, I'm going to be a little bit closer to making a decision, although I don't even think that conversation that we're going to have right now is going to lock down that belief. I'm really interested in what you have to say on this, though, because I think, if anything, the conversation that we're about to have is going to draw out a lot of emotions and ideas regarding the use of violence in cinema, and the age-old question of the chicken versus the egg, and I mean, which one is first, which influences what, and how much danger are we watching on the screen versus the violence that would manifest itself in the real world. Mr. Chavez, the standard question: what is your relationship to this film?
I am an American living under the second Trump administration. That's my relationship to this. It's like you said. It's kind of like, well, we're going to open up Alcatraz Island, and Donald Trump is going to force Joe Biden to fight Chuck Schumer. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Naked, fit, snakes. You know what I mean? Like, under a statue of himself.
Under a statue of himself dressed as the Pope, or
a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
On May 4th. You know what I mean? Like, Who knows? Who knows? But I mean, my relationship to this film is basically my relationship to that we can, and I'll go through all of this, but it's kind of like my relationship to this film, my relationship to The Running Man.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like the 90s dance, early 90s fucking that, I don't mean like that relationship to the Cabbage Patch or whatever the fuck else. I'm talking about like, it's my relationship to this film is my relationship to everyone's relationship to, we were talking about gunfights the other day.
Yeah.
Where it came up, you know what I mean? And, or professional wrestling, or all of this shit is part of an American pop cultural tradition, and we can go through some of those. I want to bring up a lot of these other films that kind of inform this, and obviously this is it's a Japanese film, but as an American, this kind of shit is what's going to really like cross over. And in that sense, it only makes perfect sense that Quentin Tarantino would be the guy who's going to be the ring announcer for that shit. To be like, oh, this is the most amazing fucking blah, blah, blah. Like, it's, of course, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because we are also going to draw from, it's like, well, what do Americans do? It's like, we're going to take something samurai and we're going to like it. And we're going to be like, yeah, that's the lone gunman. Now let's cowboy that shit. Right. And then the Japanese take some stuff back. Oh, this is Kurosawa. Let's Star Wars this shit. Oh, that's this. Let's do that. Oh, we're going to take, Bruce Lee. Of course, Bruce Lee's going to become a star. I mean, Bruce Lee is American. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So this is all, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you still know what the fuck I'm talking about in general. You may not know this movie. This movie is about a dystopian society where the government decides to punish the people who are not responsible for creating the problems that the government created. And I mean, what's your relationship to that? Well, that's everybody's relationship to that. In this case, unemployment, students basically protesting and boycotting, and then as combine that with now rising juvenile delinquency, which probably like a lot of it is probably loitering.
Yeah.
If you're saying, I mean, I'm being nitpicky, but the film, the caption says that juvenile crime rates soared. If ditching is considered a crime, and you have 800,000 students ditching, well, yeah, crime rates are going to soar. What percentage of, and again, I'm being nitpicky to that world, and none of this is explained, but it's also
let's not be nitpicky. Let's take a case. About 25, 30 years ago, there was a white kid in Singapore, remember?
Oh, yeah, the kid who got caned.
Yeah. And there was an uproar of that. But if you would describe Singapore, one of the cleanest, safest, beautiful big cities in the world, but it is the cleanliness, the politeness, and the adherence to the law is such because of an extreme social and legal constraint where this kid was he was caned for what was it? Was he spray painting something or
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But there was also stories of if you threw your gum in the street, you could be arrested. Jaywalking, you were arrested. When people start talking about making America great again, they start talking about an idealistic idea of what the country once was, ignoring the race relations, underground necessity of keeping homosexual and other depraved sexual practices in the dark. We're talking about an idyllic Disneyland world that never truly existed. But if it did exist, and if it does exist, it's because of what would you call it? Such a heavy hand of oppression maintaining the order. So yeah, you're talking. It would be very easy to just to say this fantasy world that you're describing, when in reality, you have a kid who, admittedly, when I heard the story, I didn't give a shit about some 16-year-old white kid getting the shit beat out of him in Singapore.
That's the American shit too.
Yeah,
because that's part of some other greater issue. That it's a metaphor for that, where that is also a problem. And in terms of that, in terms of people going to other places, Americans and fucking people, so-called people from the so-called West that go and fuck shit up. It's kind of like, at that point, I remember even at that time thinking like, fuck that guy. So yes. Now the idea of and describing it as Disneyland, William Gibson, the cyberpunk pioneer, he wrote an article for Wired in the 90s, and it was called Disneyland with the Death Penalty, and it was about Singapore.
That's interesting.
And it was about how pervasive fucking government overreach, and it's tied to corporatism and all that was in society. And this is all the fodder for dystopia. And again, we talked about in Ghost in the Shell, in the live action version, it was particularly Japan, but Asia, East Asia, not you don't really get that with Southeast Asia, because Americans still, there's the Vietnam thing, and then there's also, there's this racist hierarchy of Asia. I mean, there's a racist hierarchy of everything, but East Asia is considered, you know what I mean? Japan had the privilege of being allies with Hitler. You know what I mean? In that white power pyramid, so there's that. But Singapore, you have what I was doing with the idea of juvenile delinquency as crime rate. What these governments can do is, and they do it, is whether dystopian in a film or in an Alan Moore novel or graphic novel, whatever, or in Donald Trump's White House, is they exaggerate, and they turn things that are lawful, oftentimes they turn them into things that are unlawful. They reverse everything in this 1984 way. They flip it. And so you can have boycotts that become, they call it a riot, or they call it terrorism when you fucking speak out. This is what I'm talking about. Whereas potentially in that universe, in the history of that world, it could have been a relatively minor number of teenagers that were actually prone to criminality and violent crime. And how many of those people would actually go to school to begin with versus they'd already dropped out or they were already in juvenile detention? You know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's that. Now, this film came out in 2000. What's my relationship to this film? Well, my relationship to that film is Columbine as an American. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't have put the connection together, but I hadn't thought about it. Yeah.
Is already this idea of students killing students. My relationship is already gang violence in fucking in the 80s and 90s all over the United States, and particularly like the Crip blood shit that was in LA, which is, you know, the media is like, well, it was black on black crime. Yeah, sure. But it's bigger than that. And Republicans and such can say, well, what about personal responsibility? And it's like, yeah, no, for sure. At the same time, there are systemic issues that create the conditions under which those kinds of situations emerge. Now, add to that a tradition in cinema and television that creates this kind of genre. And it creates a situation that where this genre is not only a commentary on society, it's a metaphor of society in terms of like our capitalistic dog-eat-dog rat race approach to life to begin with, which is you're born into a system that whereby you have to compete. You're told not only do you have to compete, but it's your job to compete, and your job is to find a job where you compete, and you don't have many options. You either have to play the game, and this goes for these scenarios in these worlds of these movies, or in the bigger picture, it's kind of like play the game, kill or be killed. 2, you can opt out, which means you kill yourself, or you go into like you basically go into an underground fucking of people tried it with different communes. Most of those times it failed. You can go into drugs. The system and the streets will chew you up. You can kill yourself. That's the end of that. Or you can try to organize and rebel. And in this film, which is about the result of all of these student protests, where now the government has decided to, somehow the government collapsed, but then they were able to reinstitute themselves as a functional government that's able to kidnap kids, put them on this high-tech island, and have them all kill each other as a way to punish them for their rebellion against the government that collapsed, which had nothing to do with them. This film is about that premise. And within that premise, those are the 3 options that these kids have. They can either opt out, which many do. And I mean, that even goes to a stereotype and kind of like cultural element of Japan, which is this idea of like the Japanese and suicide and ritual suicide and all that, versus American culture, which is like an outward sense of rage, where it's like, no, we're gonna go shoot up a public place. Obviously, suicide is a thing here too, but Columbine is the reverse of that. Or you can try to organize and rebel, like I said. So you can be fucking John Connor. Those are the John Connor. That's what John Connor did. When his dad comes back from the future, he's like, he taught us to organize and to fight. And that's what unions do. And that's what some of these kids do, is they try to say, well, there's got to be a way out of this without us fucking killing each other, without us accepting these conditions that we find ourselves in. And ultimately, it is that, before we started recording, we were talking about alliances. We were talking about friends versus family.
Yeah.
And your friends are those, just one of those things that it's obvious. You're friends with people for a reason. Your family, that's random. Or perhaps it's your fucking karma, What the fuck did I do to deserve this? I mean, some people have great families, so, what did you do to deserve that, But this film is this crazy Battle Royale tournament style kill or be killed scenario of students, and how quickly, going to your question of the violence, how quickly they fucking of course, it's the imperative to survive, right? Before we explore other forms of other films that have this tradition, let's get into the violent part. So you're conflicted. This film got it's called what is it on?
It's an R15, I think it's nobody.
R15 plus rating, yeah. So in that rating system, it's you have to be 15 years and older in order to see it. What is your sense about the violence? How are you conflicted? What do you feel? Or what do you
think? Well, part of it is I look at the world realistically, and I take this situation and I try to be empathetic and put myself in the mindset of what would drive something like this, which is becoming increasingly more realistic and more probable to actually happen. I mean, I know we sometimes come off as conspiracy theorists or a little bit towards the doom and gloom type of attitude regarding films, but I think the world has shown that it is a darker, meaner, and more unforgiving place than people want to admit to. And I'm not saying that it has ever been, because I think it's been as bad and probably worse at other times in history.
Of course.
But I don't think I don't know that we've ever embraced the level of inhumanity in the way that we do now. And when I watch a movie like this, or at least, let's not even a movie like this, when I watch this movie, I'm watching it with the attitude of, what is the manipulation of the images that I'm seeing on screen? What is the manipulation of how I'm perceiving it? So is this designed to just excite me and grab a hold of that reptilian aspect of the brain and work on that sense of, because there's a couple of John Woo moments in this film that I didn't notice the first time watching. And granted, I haven't seen this film in 15, 20 years. So watching it again like this, I'm definitely watching it with a much different perspective and a much different analytical mindset. Watching it, I couldn't help but feel that there's the artist that makes the film and uses violence as a commentary on society as a whole. But then there's the studio that pretends that this is not something that they believe in, but secretly is sitting there going, let's put this out and make as much money as we can on it. But there's also the artist who embraces violence. So with something like this, I'm never sure on what is actually being told. Is there a lesson to be learned? Are they trying to get across something? And it's a fine line, because if it had been too obvious in violence is bad and we need to protect the youth, that would make for a very obvious and shitty film, because it would be a lack of nuance.
Well, yeah, because at that point it's a public service announcement.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess part of it is the understanding that with a project like this, you can't really win. You're kind of fucked if you do, and if you fucked if you don't, More so than in other films that we've talked about like this. Yeah.
Well, it's the violence has to be real enough. Well, the violence has to be impactful enough. I don't want to say real because that puts me in another area, but it has to be impactful enough to mean something.
Yeah.
But then, because supply and demand, like the more fucking violence, like you get diminishing returns. So the more violence there is, actually, the less it means. Because it's kind of like, oh, how many fucking shots were fired? 1 million.
Yeah.
How many fucking times did that person get hit? 1 million. How many fucking equivalents of like blood, the blood equivalent of a money shot? 1 million. Who cares, right? There's that, but it's kind of like you can't have only one scene, only one violent scene. And so, yeah, it's this crazy balancing act. And at the same time, you have to have levels, because I think you do want to engage the reptilian brain, because from there you can build, but you have to engage the reptilian brain, because you have to make or try to make the audience react, because otherwise, like, the audience is not engaged. And the whole point is to make this seem like a thing that the audience is experiencing. So fear, excitement, anger, all of that has to be somehow brought into it. And so that all that is like fear, violence, sexuality, all of that stuff has to be present. And then you can bring in like, well, this violence represents competition. This violence represents self-preservation. This violence represents the violence against oneself as like a guilt, or oppression, or social fucking of conformity. All of this shit. The violence represents whether you decide that it's patriarchy or this or that or culture or whatever, however it works. The norms of that society that say the nail that sticks out gets hammered in. Well, hammering it in is violent. It doesn't. You don't negotiate with the nail for it to go back in, because the nail's sticking out. the nail can say, well, it's not my fault. I'm a nail that was made to stick out. But the carpenter says, fuck you, the nail that sticks out gets hammered in. And you can go in easily or you can go in with difficulty, but it's on you. So, I mean, you have to show all of that. You have to put these kids in a position where they're gathered together with these, they wake up with these fucking explosive necklaces and they're like, what the fuck, I don't believe you. And it's like, well, because they don't believe the situation. And Takeshi Kitano's like, I will show you how real this is. And so now, boom, one of you dies. You get it? Okay, good. There are X amount of you. You have to kill each other. Only one survives. You better do it now. Go. And how quickly motherfuckers are like, well, it's not going to be me. I'm not going to fucking die. Fuck you. I love you, bro, but you're dead. You know what I mean? And then you put yourself in that situation, and it's like, what if it was me and you on there? You know what I mean? Like, there are going to be different responses again. Do you kill or be killed? Do you opt out? Do you try to fucking like... I like that show Survivor because it's particularly this. It's got a physical element. It's got a political element because it's a social game. Can you make alliances? And I've talked about this before. Early on, people were learning to watch the game and learning about how the game worked. And then eventually people who grew up watching the game ended up playing the game. And those people kind of realized there used to be this idea of alliances as this like real like loyalty test. And there's this, I mean, obviously it's a human thing to not betray someone.
Yeah.
Because if you betrayed someone, you were seen as, it was like, oh, that's so fucked up. Like, I had to do it, but the other person's like, look, I know you had to do it, but fuck you because you betrayed me. Because the idea is like, look, if you and I make an alliance, we're going to try to make it to the end together. And then when it's just two people, everyone else decides who to pick as the winner. So at that point, it's out of our hands. All we have to do is make it to the end together, man. Like, that's it. It's just me and you. That's it. But then if I meet Leslie on the island and I'm just like, man, fuck Rick. Like he's my friend, but we'll be friends when this is done. This is $1 million, right?
Yeah.
There's that element. So there's the element of Leslie's like, oh, this idiot fucking is falling for me. He's going to betray his friend. His friend's not going to vote for him later. Fuck this guy, but I'm going to pretend. And then he votes, we get out Rick, and then now I can get him out later. Or I can go all the way with him, and then everyone's going to be like, fuck this guy because he betrayed everyone for me. So even though I'm the bitch, fuck it, can you blame me? Like, fuck him. He's the one who did, he's the moron. So there's all these things that go into play there. Then there's this idea of like people realize it's not about loyalty till the end. It's about temporary alliances, voting blocks. We don't have to have the same fucking ideology. We don't have to have the same worldview. We don't have to have the same whatever. All we need to do is just get together to vote for this because it's in our best interest now. We can refigure out shit later. Those were the students of the game. And the game has continued to evolve. You've had groups. One guy, his name was Boston Rob. At one, he came back a couple times, very much similar to this, where you have repeat players. When he won, spoiler fucking alert, however many years ago, he fucking had his group completely avoid speaking to the other group, the other tribe, until they all merged, and then they picked off the other tribe one by one, and then they started picking off each other. He had complete control over his fucking group. It was brilliant. And it's a game, but it's also like, no, like, that sounds familiar to me. You have such control over a fucking group or political party, maybe, that they no longer even debate with the opposite side. they fall in line to such a degree that it's kind of like people start calling you the cult. And then once you've picked off the other side, then you start picking off from yourself. And then now you have basically on a deeper level is kind of like that's the both the logic of and the fucking the contradiction of capitalism itself, which is competition leads to basically a select few, and then ultimately the goal of monopoly. That's why we play that game. You don't play that game so that everyone can have money together and like there is no jail and fucking whatever. Like, no, motherfucker, like there's one winner who has the most shit. And the idea is to take from everyone else. And this shit is either a metaphor for that. These types of films or these types of stories, they're either a metaphor for that or they're a metaphor for the entertainment aspect of that based on societies that are tyrannical that fucking create those conditions so that most of the people who live in those societies can be appeased by watching shit like that. So that's why you have ancient Roman gladiatorial shit or knights' tourneys. Violent as fuck. And we're focused on the gladiators killing each other. We're not focused on the fucking people who set the stage for this shit. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. See, for me,
think about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Please finish.
No, I mean, go ahead, because I was going to start talking about some of these older films and have you
okay.
jump in and talk about them and the relationship to this.
Well, that's the thing. You have, like, you describe the people involved in this and it being a contest of wills, a contest of survival, a contest of understanding your own desires versus your limitations. And I think you have the group of people who commit suicide and are immediately written off as cowards. But for me, I look at some of those people and I say, they're the more brave. They're the bravest people in the film. Because there is an aspect of looking at a situation, looking at looking at what you are up against and realizing that it cannot be beaten within the parameters of the contest that is set forth in front of you. So I would argue in a situation like you see in Battle Royale that I would kill myself in the same way that some of these young people do, as a matter of not allowing the game to take control of me, to not allow the game to make me into a murderer.
Right.
You know, so there's that aspect of it where it's like also the desire to survive doesn't take into the account the change that you make in surviving.
Right.
You know,
That's
now
right.
of course you know if this was all followed like what I'm saying, we wouldn't have a movie. But also, this is typical of what would happen. Some people are just afraid. Some people would not allow themselves to be used in this manner. And some people would not realize the person that they would have to become and are unable to come back from in participating in this. That's
people would also would really, really acclimatize to this shit in ways that they would not. They would be like, oh shit, like you know,
I was made for this motherfucker. Yeah,
I was made for this. Yeah. And not even know it. And then some people like wouldn't even come to that realization because they've already fucking like been like that to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like for sure. I mean to opt out in that sense is in it's like leaving a fucking bad relationship or leaving a bad situation at work where it's like, no, I'm gonna quit. And the idea of quitting and like, oh, you're a fucking quitter, you're a loser. It's like, no, motherfucker, like, I'm deciding to take this shit into my hands and I'm getting out of this situation.
Yeah.
So in that sense, people who would opt out in that way from this type of game are actually taking, existentially, that's a statement of their own dignity and their own personhood, and saying, no, I have agency outside of this. I don't have to participate in the game. Yes, my life is over, but like, as to what your point is, like, my life is over as I know it anyway. Some other people are going to be like, no, fuck you. I'm an American. I'm going to win.
Yeah.
I'm going to win this shit. I'm a champion. I was born to fucking be this person. And of course, that's what, in order for the game to be played, that's what everyone has to believe.
That's what a lot of them do believe.
Absolutely. And then add the element of, like, they're given bags with supposedly, who knows, how, with these random, like, items. Of course, not all the items are the same, and that's kind of the way we're born. You're born into the world with, I mean, obviously we're all born into the world with nothing, but depending on what place we're born, what time in history we're born, what body we're born into, what family we're born into, what society we're born into, those are basically the items that we're born with. And some people are born with binoculars. Some people are born with fucking machine guns. Some people are born with knives, or born into this game with those things. Some people don't have any fucking weapons. They have, like, shitty weapons or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So people they don't begin on an even playing field. Not to mention, like, these kids also have different dispositions and different bodies. So some people are more athletic to begin with. And if you're more athletic and you have a fucking gun, like, versus some fucking bookworm kid who fucking wears glasses that if you break your glasses, well, now you can't see.
Yeah.
And you have, like, nothing, or you have some, like, shitty fucking weapon that you're given, well, you're fucked, dude. What are you going to do? Because it's not like at school where you can be funny, and that makes it so that, like, okay, you're not going to get picked on because you're funny. Like, you're fucked. So what do? That's the thing. Hollywood has a whole series of, and I'm curious to know if you've seen some of these films too. Like, if you go back to, there's this international, I saw clips of it in I think it was in a film class, and it's called The Gladiators. It's from the late 60s, and it's like, it's an international film about different soldiers that are put together to maintain peace. These different soldiers have to fight each other. Instead of actual war.
It sounds familiar, but no, I've never seen it.
Then go further into the Dragon. That's a fucking martial arts film. Bruce Lee. That's his fucking, like, that's his fucking considered to be his greatest film. Have you seen that?
Years ago, but I always knew Bruce Lee as more of a figure than an actual movie star. Like, I knew the films and I knew scenes from the films, but to be completely honest with you, I've never sat through an entire Bruce Lee film from beginning to end.
It's very, Enter the Dragon is very dated.
Yeah.
It's very 70s. It's cool, and it definitely has, like, a racial element to it. Because it's got Jim Kelly, so it has, like, the black fucking martial arts guy. Fucking, it has, I forgot his name. There's a white guy in it. That's
John Saxon, isn't it? John Saxon.
Yes, exactly. Yes. He's like the more, like, lover guy, and he's got the chicks, and it's on this island, of course, and it's it's got its iconic shit. Death Race 2000. Did you ever see that Roger Corman fucking
Yeah.
David Carradine? And it's got Stallone and it's fucking nuts. Big Brawl, Jack the Cat.
Yeah, I know the Big Brawl. Battle Creek Brawl, yeah.
Same shit. And Americans eat this shit up. Conan the Barbarian is fucking has John Milius that has that aspect of it. Of the
the beginning of it is there. Yeah. Well, Gladiator as well. Gladiator. Russell Crowe.
Absolutely. But even before that, Mad Max, fucking Beyond Thunderdome. You talked about that.
Yeah.
Fucking Bartertown, fucking Tina Turner as the bad bitch, you know? The Running Man, of course. I love the music to that film. And it really comments on 80s, 70s and 80s game show culture. But mixed with this blood sport element that's focused on criminals or convicts. And did you ever watch American Gladiators, a TV show?
Yeah. It was
same shit.
It was ridiculous, but I did watch it, yeah.
Yeah, except for those of you who may not know about American Gladiator, Running Man was Schwarzenegger, fucking roided out, 80s, he's wrongfully convicted and he has to fucking participate in this TV show where he has to square up against these different cartoonish, comic book-esque, basically gladiators that come out on this show, and he has to try to survive this game. American Gladiator is a TV show where contestants go through these obstacle courses and they have to square up against, similarly, these roided out fucking co-eds that are basically trying to like knock them off pedestals and do all this shit, and it's this elimination thing. And then also in the 80s, for those of you who were into professional wrestling, there was the Survivor Series. I don't know if you ever watched it.
No.
It's like an elimination tag team thing where it's like four wrestlers. It'll be like maybe like 2 tag teams, or else a tag team plus 2 like individual wrestlers. They team up against another group of 4, and you basically eliminate from those groups. And so it's the drama around that, and are they 2 rivals like in the same team, like different shit, you know? The Royal Rumble was a battle royale in wrestling.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. So wrestlers go in at timed intervals. So you start off with 2, and every few minutes another guy gets added to the mix, and they're just fighting in the ring. And the way to eliminate them is to throw them over the top rope, and if their foot touches the mat outside of the ring, they're eliminated. So eventually you just get all these fucking people just hitting each other in the ring until finally there's only one. Van Damme, there was an Eric Roberts movie, I think that one was called Best of the Best.
Yeah.
The Van Damme one, I don't remember what it's called, but I know it was in the 90s.
Was it a Bloodsport?
There's Bloodsport, but I think there was another one too. It was probably Van Damme's whole career. There was Survivor, which I talked about. There's the Jason Statham Death Race movie, which is similar to the
original, the Corman film, yeah.
Then, more recently, there's been Squid Game, which I've never seen, but it's basically this.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the millennial phenomenon of the Hunger Games, which is basically, it was a young adult series of novels that got adapted into movies with Jennifer Lawrence, it's about a dystopian society where they take adolescents from each court district in this country, in this fictional country, and each of those districts had once been part of a rebellion against that society, and so now they're punished because they have to offer up these tributes or these like sacrifices in the Hunger Games. And the idea is like, all right, poor motherfucker, we're gonna take some kids from your areas, you're all gonna fight to kill each other, and then if you win, you get money, and you can take your money to back to your poor people at home. And this is your life. And we are all entertained. And it's got, I mean, it's a critique of reality TV, for sure. It's got that millennial kind of love triangle Twilight element to it. It's got the girl boss millennial ethos, the female protagonist. But there's such a level of artificiality to it that, I mean, it suits it because
that's a good point that you make. The artificiality, where it seems more calculated than this. This seems more. This is. Right. I think this is because this is an uglier film, and it's not done in a stadium like where you're watching. I think it would have trivialized it almost if it had been something that that it showed on television without showing the mentality of the people actually watching it. I think I only saw one episode of The Hunger Games. I saw the first film. I never saw the other films. I realized real quick, this is not worth investing another 6 or 10 hours into finishing this shit. But I like the idea of extreme human behavior and people being forced to examine their own humanity. And when you put it with children, which all of this goes back to the original source material. Maybe there's something even earlier, but I think the source of all of this is William Golding's 1954, The Lord of the Rings? No, something of the Flies. Lord of the Flies, that's right. Lord of the Flies, where most of us read that in high school, middle school, whatever. Many of us did, I should say. And there were at least 2 film adaptations of it. But it was this sense of what does, especially on an unformed, still evolving brain, what is the desire and the lengths to which the survival instinct kicks in? With that, it was even more interesting because it was, how does the society break down and then start rebuilding itself in the form of alliances and an attempt to create or to recreate some semblance of order, which you kind of see in this film as well. You have 2 groups. You have a group of girls who become matronly and then turn on each other, and you have a technological group that their idea might have been able to have ended this whole fucking thing. I thought there were some really interesting ideas here, and I think that was in a way that,
They're the revolutionary group.
Yeah.
They're the revolutionary group that's like, one guy is like, I'm going to fucking hack the system and disrupt them. At the same time, we're going to create these fertilizer bombs.
Yeah. Very basic.
Yeah, very fucking Oklahoma City, you know?
Yeah.
But not, we think of that and that's domestic terrorism and it's twisted and killing innocent people, with racial dynamic locked in there too. Because that's also a response to Waco, and it's a response to that fucking shooting in Idaho, which the name of where the FBI killed those fucking white supremacists, those separatists. Ruby Ridge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But we'll get closer to that when we do like American History X or something like that. But anyway, so
Yeah.
that's more fun times to come later. And what was I saying? So, the fertilizer farm. So there was the revolutionary group, and then the nurturing group of women who they're cooking and they're like taking care of like basically the protagonist guy after he's injured. But you have all of these different. It becomes also like archetypal, like high school movies, because you have these different. You have like the hot chick who's fucking psycho. You have the nerd. You have the fucking jock. You have the fucking psycho guy. You have all of these archetypes. You have this Breakfast Club of Death.
Nice. Breakfast Club of Death.
And you're watching them all fuck each other over, or like reveal that I've always loved you, and it's like you never. How was I supposed to know you never told me?
Yeah.
But it doesn't. The thing is that it doesn't. It's emotional, but it never goes into being maudlin. And this is just another fucking critique of Hollywood: is that like Hollywood has the tendency to reduce everything to its most ostentatious and at the same time basic bullshit. And that's why the Hunger Games has those moments, those big moments with the big music where it's just like, oh, fucking Katniss Evergreen or whatever the fuck her name is, like, is so fucking cool or whatever, but it's like, this looks ridiculous. And the artificiality of it just, like I said, it suits the format and the subject matter and the metaphor of the film to have it be artificial because the whole situation is artificial. But at the same time, it's kind of like, but now the delivery of it is artificial as well. And we already know that it's artificial because it's a film. We're like, there's that part. But this seems much more grounded, and it doesn't even have to be grounded in reality because, for example, I think The Running Man is also artificial and has an element of being cheesier because it's super 80s out. But at the same time, its artificiality to me seems much more consequential in the same way that I watch fucking, let's say you watch 80s wrestling. But I think part of it has to be like, there's a nostalgia factor, but it's also the fact that you know that like behind the scenes, like a lot of these injuries are real. There's fucking steroids. It's kind of like a flip side of pornography, where we're watching people fucking use their bodies to do all this crazy shit. And instead of like it being it's for our pleasure also, but it's also the revelation of like, or the transmission of like these characters' pain and like even at some point ecstasy when they're fucking like when they triumph at the end. It's fucking will to power. It's that there's a fascistic element there too, where it's like Nietzsche's will to power is like, that's what drives us, is that we want to fucking not only have agency, but we want to have authority and power. And then that's taken up by fucking Nazis, that idea. And it's like, no, like not only do I want, again, to be able to control my own life, real power is to be able to control others. And then add another element is like, we talked about Mel Gibson. It's like, just the other day around Easter, I told Liz, I was like, let's watch Passion of the Christ. She hadn't seen it. And it's such a it's we've talked about the violence against women that and you've mentioned this, that in films that show heroic female characters, how often do they have to be subjugated and abused and battered and beaten and raped
specifically raped,
in order to rise out of the ashes, right? And the Christ figure and the Passion, where he's savaged, especially in Mel Gibson's version, there is no rape, but there are these elements of that, where not that, but the elements of it's the body being abused in such a way that, like, there's a sadistic element where it's just kind of like, fuck. There's a show that Leslie used to watch about, it was this like time travel Scottish movie, Outlander. And it has scenes of rape, it has scenes of violence. And there was one scene that she showed me and I was like, oh, I gotta tap out of this. Like that was it was a homosexual rape that was it was not only physical, but it was psychological. And it was like, whoa, like usually I'm not really uncomfortable with shit, but it was just kind of like, wow, this is so pervasively, such a violation on a pervasive level. But it's not only the body, it's not only American Me or Deliverance or anything like that, which can become cartoonish because you can separate and you can kind of like, it's almost as a viewer, you're like disassociated, right?
Yeah.
But this was so like, it took the pain to such a degree that the person in pain then started to experience pleasure from the spaces in between the pain.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like this, you see versions of that with Christ, where it's like he's beaten and then he's picked up, or he's helped up, or they help him or they wipe his face. The heavy breathing. It's a naked guy on a tree. There is eroticism there. In this, there is that element too, where it's like to kill, and then in between there's these spaces of just fucking heavy breathing and like who's next. So this does trigger a lot of it triggers a lot of reptilian shit. And then you start to add elements of like a little bit of backstory. And again, the in this Breakfast Club of Death, like typology, where it's like, well, the crazy bitch, like, okay, it's not going to be fucked up when she dies because she deserves it. Versus the good kid, it sucks. You know, if it's the fat kid, oh, it fucking sucks. Blah, blah, these. But then if you mix it up, and then later on you see, oh, that chick that I thought was crazy, oh, she's just fucking like completely ostracized. This happened to her in her past. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but then there's also, huh?
There was something about that doll scene that was really disturbing.
Yeah. But then at the same time, it's kind of like when she is able to defend herself, you already get a sense that it's like, oh, she's already fucked up. Like, because she did that too easily. So there's a lot of complexity beneath just high school kids killing each other on an island. And as simple as the premise is, and as simple as the no pun intended execution is, you want complexity versus just surface level grandiosity, the pomp and circumstance of a Hunger Games. That's very much Roman Empire, fucking Donald Trump. Like, we're just gonna put on the greatest show on earth. But there's not really a way for you to access those deeper levels of meaning there. you have to look for them. Whereas this is much more gritty, and it has that over-the-top violence, which on some level there's going to be people that are like, oh, that's so fucking cool. Like, look at the way that this happens, or look at how cool that explosion is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see the actual results of it, which is like the flashy, cool fucking fireworks show ends in blood. It doesn't end in glory. And by the end of the film, you get these little requiem pieces that seem somewhat out of place, but not. Like, I think they work. And then Takeshi Kitano, his performances are always just the way his face is, the way his performances are. There's always like, you're not sure where he stands. There's like this ambivalence there. So it lends itself to the sense of being displaced while you're watching this movie. Yeah, I don't know if it's the greatest fucking thing since sliced bread, like Tarantino says, but I think that he is behind something, in the same way that, like, I found out about Chungking Express with him through that Tarantino Presents whatever distribution thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's why I was able to rent it. The first time I saw this movie, I rented it, and I saw it, and I started to play it, and it was in English. It was dubbed.
Oh,
and I
God.
got very angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some shit, like, I've seen, like, growing up, I saw Akira, like, with the English dub also, like, on VHS, like, so that actually has, like, I'm down with both, because there's also the element of, like, fuck, like, that's how I first saw it.
Yeah.
But to stream this shit and like, you know, you pay $3 or whatever it was, and I was kind of like, no, like, I do not want to see this shit, like, dubbed.
Yeah.
So will we see, I mean, we are living in a world where it's like, who's to say that, the fucking some national security advisor and dear leader's cabinet isn't going to be like, we should have fucking fights at the Pentagon.
Well, I can only imagine somebody saying, Donald, you need to see this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No.
And then,
Yes.
Yeah, wow, okay. You know, this is the guy that quoted The Purge. People forget
Right.
a lot of the stupid shit that he says. But this would definitely be something along the lines of something that he would say, well, you know, Japan is a clean country, very polite. Maybe it's because something like this takes place and that you're able to, you know, they're really ahead of the curve over there. Maybe we should take a lesson from them, you know? He's that kind of a fucking moron that you could, and you know, maybe I am reaching until I might be reaching right now, but they're pushing the fence closer to me every time.
Well, I mean, it's like, I propose that we give violent, criminal, illegal aliens the chance to fight to become American.
Yeah.
If you want to prove your love of this country, show us. Fight for us. In a gladiatorial tournament called the Trump Games. Like, is that not within the realm of like, at least being a discussion? I think you're absolutely right. If they haven't already talked about it, yeah?
Yeah. I think,
on his birthday.
Yeah, on his birthday, yeah. With tanks and bombs exploding in the air. Yeah. Because this is what, you know, this is how you honor a king. This is what you do. I mean,
and this is also idiocracy. There's that scene, you know?
Yeah.
When you're punished, you know, you're forced to it becomes monster trucks also. That's another element.
Yeah. It's big, it's grandness, it's decorating with gold and gold leaf. It's shitting on a golden toilet. It's the audacity of just making something bigger than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's waste. It's just fucking embarrassing. But it seems to be what a great many people, or at least the most vocal, want. If they were to create a battle royale, you could see this on TV.
Of course.
And people would pay for this.
Well, they would be on pay-per-view. They would have to pay for it.
Well, Carlin did this bit 15 years ago. Talking about, you remember? Just, let's make all of these states prison farms, box them up, cage them up, little gates that open up for 7 seconds in between, and you got rapists, murderers, fucking gang members. You got mob, and they're all facing off against each other once a month, and it is something that will sell because there is a bloodlust. And people have a desire to see pain. As long as it's not their own pain, there is a desire to see that. We've talked a lot about, we've talked over the last 7 or 8 years about an episode of violence against women without ever jumping into it. And I think part of it is because I don't really want to watch those movies. I don't want to watch I Spit on Your Grave and see a 23-minute rape scene. Watching Monica Bellucci get raped in a fucking tunnel for 9.5 minutes was about all that I could really stand. But there is something to an audience that would embrace that and, take that bitch. That's what you fucking get, whore. But then tell themselves that there's some kind of nobility because she gets to turn the tables later and kill them all in the most violent and sadistic ways imaginable. Yeah. And that's the thing that I wonder with this film. I don't think this film is gratuitous. I think it's extreme, but I don't think that there are moments where that the violence it's ugly, but in a weird way, it's a more honest and real violence. It's not excessive. The violence it's an excessively violent film, but it's a violence that speaks towards the ugliness of humanity. In a weird way, it's a lot like, what's that?
And the excesses of modern society.
Yeah.
Well, even ancient societies, depending, the excesses of empire.
Exactly. But think about, there's this film. Think about Peckinpah in '68. You go back to The Wild Bunch. Even today, The Wild Bunch is an incredibly violent movie that could easily be dismissed as gratuitous. I don't feel that way.
Because again, it's a flip side of porn because it's like Peckinpah. We've talked about fucking Peckinpah and his fucking fantasies. You know what I mean? It's that just becomes a fucking cum shot fucking video, but it's blood. I mean, and that's the same thing as the slasher genre was all about that. It's in that Japanese film House. It's kind of like, it's just a bunch of kids and we're gonna just watch them die one by one.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's the final girl. You know what I mean? And this film has its version of the final girl as the final boy. And it's the same. What you're describing is also, this comes from, this film is Japanese again, but in our society, it's the same society that makes it so that when we did that R rating, that rating.
NC-17 X-rated, yeah.
Yeah, that fucking the idea of watching a woman receive oral sex or have an orgasm or that isn't super performative, that's going to get a fucking crazy rating or they're going to be asked to cut. But that's the same society that will say we have to fear that. It's the same society that produces fucking those gangbang fucking videos of the 90s where it's like chicks would go and they would fuck like 100 dudes.
World's biggest gangbang. Yeah. Jasmine Sinclair, that shit.
And then they'll go on Howard Stern and talk about it, and it's like, and I'm not shaming that. I'm not shaming them. What I'm saying is that it's all about excess. It's all about it has to be the biggest. It has to be the grandest. It has to be the scope of it has to be like, okay, well, this is gonna be if she did 100, I'm gonna do 101. It's this like keeping up with the Joneses shit.
I think there's a a comparison is very valid there, where the women who are involved in this, and I'm making a judgment, but I think I think you take into account the human condition and who we are as a people. The woman who enters into that kind of a sexual experience, there is no way to describe that as not exploitation to me. And whatever the woman thinks is her regaining power or engaging in the chaos, I just can't imagine that as human beings we're not, she's not being abused and taken advantage of. Physically abused, but also psychologically and emotionally abused, and then taking advantage of the propensity for that abuse. But I don't fault her in the way of that fucking whore loves cock and she's got no respect for herself. What I'm saying is she's fucked up. But what's really fucked up are the people who are producing it and have no problem finding somebody broken enough to victimize them in that manner. And I've heard women talk in numerous Instagram clips of the excitement of a gangbang and how they love the chaos of it. But I've seen a couple of those videos, and there's a sadness to those women that it's just I don't think you can hide it. There's a brokenness there. That's an extreme level of fucked up that I don't think most people or anybody that I've ever encountered is capable of entering into from a stable emotional or mental place. Now, in this film, the sick, perverted fucks, not even the Kitano character, but the military behind it. One of the brilliant things about Takeshi Kitano is, you mentioned it earlier, the blankness of him. You can't read it. You don't know what the fuck is going on with him. So you're left to really wonder. I don't know if I would call him a good actor, but I would say he's compelling on screen. The things that I've seen him in, Hanabi, Zatoichi, Fireworks, Hanabi's Fireworks, I think, Boiling Points, Violent Cop. These films are... Yeah. Which one?
Sonatina?
Sonatin?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Kikujiro. I mean, there's some really... He's making some bold statements in these films, and you have to go back to them to know exactly what I'm referring to. But the producer who sees the weakness and says, I can shoot this, that's the scumbag. That's the fuck. The woman who gets on the bus is not the problem. Bang Brothers are the fucking problem.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
You know what I mean? But like in the reality of the world we live. What's that?
Whether it's the military or all these different systems, you're basically talking about the infrastructure of exploitation. That's basically what you're talking about. I mean, and from the perspective of what you're saying about, I mean, there's an opposite argument to be said from like second wave feminist, pro-sex feminist perspective, which would say, well, listen, like, as long as these people are not being trafficked, they're choosing to participate in that. Like, it's also a very like free market kind of position, which is to say, like, hey, if you don't like your fucking job, get another job. If you don't like this, if you don't like that society, move to another society.
Yeah.
With the assumption that that there is that sense of like mobility and the sense of choice and the sense of there is that argument. But at the same time, from the argument you're making, there's this greater idea of like, well, these like from that perspective, these patriarchal systems don't only, and not to discount what you're saying about how they harm the female porn star. I mean, like, basically they turn those women into sacrificial starlets, right?
Yeah.
But just as harmed are the anonymous dicks that fucking like are the meat market that keeps the machine grinding.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's on both sides. And it's like, I don't know if someone's like a porn connoisseur or a porn historian, then I'm sure they know who these people are. But it's kind of like the average fucking straight guy is not going to know fucking male porn star. And not that means anything, but like the ones that get like the so-called stardom are the chicks that are put on the boxes and especially back in the day, they're the chicks that go to the conventions and do all that stuff, and like they're the name and the face that sells they're the marquee. The dudes are they're basically behind the scenes but on camera, because again, they're just anonymous fucking dicks. There's another element to it. Leslie and I were talking about this recently. Is I was explaining like this idea of like there's an element, a psychological element in porn that touches on male inadequacy, and this idea that the males at any point when they confront the feminine is that there's a sense of like, am I good enough? Especially like connected to, and this is all like Freudian and like that kind of like tradition, because it's all like, will I rise to the occasion, basically, because the proof, it's there or it's not, right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, am I good enough? And it's not only a sense of like to see a woman so we can objectify her through porn. It's also this idea of like to be a stand-in for the person who's performatively creating pleasure in her, and to therefore to feel like a moment of respite from that tension or that sense of like, fuck, all you have to do is put on porn and you see this chick screaming and bouncing, and you're like, you get that without the risk involved in actually confronting an actual person and being put in a situation where there is that risk. So it like mitigates that. And then a more, I don't want to say a more negative, but a more, I mean, definitely yes, but not that this is negative or not negative, but this other avenue, which is like the aspect of like, well, if it's too uncomfortable for me to be put into that situation to reveal my own inadequacy or sense of inadequacy or tension or fear of that confrontation, then it's better for me to dominate. And that's when you get into like that sense of control, or the simple sense of just like porn just becomes an outlet of they're just body parts. Like, it's not an actual person. It's just an outlet to fucking get off and simply reduce that whole prospect of being confronted by another person to just tits and ass bouncing and screaming and squirting and simple. And even more simple, just cut the whole fucking, in a Freudian way, just take the whole penis right out of it and just have lesbian porn. And then I don't even have to worry about us, even a stand-in for myself. It's just two chicks and it's fine. I'll just be the outsider looking in that sense. There's also like, now going back to this violence, like, fuck it, I'm not even going to put myself in this situation. I'm just going to watch everyone else kill each other. And I don't have to think about either I don't have to think about the job that's trying to kill me, but trying to at the same time keep me alive, or I can pretend to be that guy. It's either or. You can either detach, again, opt in or opt out. Either detach or fucking pretend like, oh, I can be Donald Trump too, because that's the aspiration, is to be the rich guy who doesn't seem to have any of those senses of inadequacy. He doesn't seem to have, supposedly, right? I mean, in that cultish version of it, where it's like the biggest crowds and the biggest this and the biggest that, and you have the Schadenfreude aspect of enjoying fucking pleasure that comes from someone else's pain. One of the most interesting things that I ever did in theater, that I thought my choice was interesting, like my ego thought that my choice was interesting, but at the same time I really enjoyed playing that, it was just in this one little skit, and in this skit there's this outsider character, this girl, and there's just a group of boys. I don't know if you ever saw this scene, and it was done, like different versions of it were done, and I'm going to leave out the details, but at one point, for no reason, these kids decide to throw rocks at this girl. And so it turns.
I remember this. I've seen this.
And the character that I played was kind of like this shy kid or whatever. And my interpretation of it, and it was very basic, but I went fully into this idea of this kid being like so full of fear and feeling so lucky to be accepted by this other group. And when the group decides to throw rocks at this girl, I look at this other kid, and the kid is like, yeah, just do it. And the kid isn't forcing me to do it. The kid is like encouraging me. And the kid wasn't like, it wasn't mean. The kid was like, come on, like, here, like, and like basically gave me rocks to throw. And I felt, and I didn't want to because I was afraid, and I also thought it was wrong to throw rocks at this other girl. And so the first rock that I threw was like very, very reluctantly. It was just kind of like, I just barely let go of it, and it just kind of like just touched her. But the way I played it, and it just kind of happened organically through first happening in rehearsal, was that something, like we said earlier, I was born for this. There was something that came alive in me when I did that. And from then, the kid that I played turned into the most evil fucking kid ever. But it wasn't something that if I were that kid, that I would have said, oh, I'm evil. It was that everything that I had followed up inside of me as that character, every fear, every sense, again, of inadequacy, of being abused, not even actual so-called abuse. I'm just talking about, like, being passed over by life and feeling that as a sense of having been abused. Feeling like I have no power in life turned into me as that character. Slowly, the rocks, and there was this kind of like shivering aspect that I felt when I threw. There was like something went up and down my spine when I threw that rock and I hit that girl, and it was so fucked up. And our friend, the director, he's like, "Oh, that's so fucked up," and that kid, like, he likes it. And it wasn't that I liked doing it, because at the same time, it's not like I went off and I was like, "Oh my God, I feel so horrible that I depicted this scene." It wasn't that. It was, I actually felt proud because I felt I had connected to something that was really fucked up and really psychologically real in human beings.
Yeah.
And I represented it. And I think it like translated without being Hunger Games obvious, but at the same time it was like readable. And it was like, oh shit, yeah, that kid went from there to there. And that, I'm not just telling that story to boost my own fucking ego. That's just a byproduct. But that's what this kind of film becomes. And it's that tension between who do you trust? How do you connect with other people in a situation when you are bound to fucking like only supposedly look out for yourself because those are the dynamics of the game that are imposed? What is your way out? Is there a way out? If you fucking win, you still lose because you played their game.
Yeah.
If you opt out, you win, but you still lose because you die. In a sense, we're all in the systems that we live in. We are in a version of this game.
No, that's
Obviously,
very true. Yeah. How much are you selling of yourself? Yeah.
And how much are you fucking over the next person? Like right now, we're in a situation where there is a lot of economic uncertainty because of tariffs, supply chain, etc. There's a lot of also, I mean, climate is going to make different immigration crises worse. The responses are going to be these populist fucking like, fuck all those people. They're going to come and take my shit. We're talking on phones that were probably made, not probably, they were made by slave labor. And who knows the fucking conditions that were, that existed just to get the fucking, and not even who knows, we can look it up. The conditions that in order to get the rare earth minerals, etc., to get just parts to make microchips for this phone. If you want to be like ecologically fucking climate conscious, okay, solar panels. Okay, well, how the fuck do they make those? And who's fucking mining shit to make those? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's like we're fucking people over just by existing. And it's not like we're doing it on purpose, but we are living in economies that fuck other people over. And that's just how it is.
Well, now you sound like a communist, so that's the label you're going to get thrown on. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I mean, look, there is no alternative at this point to capitalism.
Yeah.
And people who critique capitalism, the ones who haven't committed suicide, like Mark Fisher, who did commit suicide, like we're very aware of like that it's the only game in town type of shit. And he described it as a zombie. He's like, it's basically dead, but it keeps walking because there's nothing else. We are in this late capitalist system, and it's exploitation all the fucking way around. And even if there is no viable alternative or solution to or cure to this problem or disease or however you want to describe it, or this just if you want to just say this system, whatever, that doesn't mean that the critiques of it are wrong.
No, not at all.
Because the critiques we see the real time effects of these things that were described by Marx long fucking ago. Does that mean that Marx was fucking right about everything? No. We're just talking about these elements that are like, oh, exploitation in all of its definitions? Sure. I see that. Of course. So we are in the Hunger Games. We are in, as middle class or as fucking whatever version of middle class with, and I say that meaning like we're right now podcasting. I don't know if it's your day off. I'm going to go to work later.
Yeah.
But I have I don't work fucking 16 hours a day. I work a normal shift, and I get a lunch break and all this shit. And yes, like, as much as we want to talk shit about our jobs or whatever, like, there are people who don't get that. We're not fucking, at this point in our existence, we may be like so-called wage slaves, but we're not fucking actual slaves. And some people in this world are living in those conditions. If you're listening to this podcast, you have the benefit of listening to a fucking podcast. Not whether it's ours or any, I'm just being in general, just like we have the luxury of recording one. And we live in a society where we can, so far so far so good, we can fucking critique our government. We'll see how that changes. We live in a society where we have certain privileges, and we're aware of those. But we know the weapons that we were given that were in our bag. You know, if we have guns or binoculars or whatever metaphorical fucking tools that we were given in our kit. But we are all in this fucking metaphorical battle royale. And our existential question is like, okay, how do you behave in this scenario? And like, do you even accept the statement that I made? That's right there immediately. Do you say, you know what? No, I don't accept that I'm in a battle royale. It doesn't have to be the metaphor. This doesn't have to be what it is.
But I think there's a difference.
Probably the first step.
Yeah, that's probably. I think there's a difference between accepting something and recognizing it.
And that's another thing, is that there is an element where it's like, as much as you reject my premise, is like, look around you and tell me that there are not elements of that, or people who believe that that's what it is, and that's therefore on some level what it is. And the question is, how do we fucking behave in this scenario? And how do we choose to, and I'm not obviously talking about in literal terms, but how do we navigate these Hunger Games? How do we navigate this death race? How do we navigate this battle royale? How do we navigate the Running Man? This gladiatorial, metaphorical fucking system. And I mean, at some point we're the audience, at another point we're the participant, at another point we're the contestant.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're the fucking army that's like part of the fucking machinery of exploitation that is fucking somebody else over because of our own ambitions that we disguise as, oh, I'm just doing my job. That's the question.
Yeah, it is.
buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. If you really want to hear us critique capitalism more, send us your money. This without being experts on capitalism, or experts on Marxism or anything else. This episode is dedicated to Esai, one of our listeners. Thank you all. By sending us money, you help us to at least keep the platform of the podcast going, and to keep the archive up.
Yeah, it's
so
very important.
It costs a certain amount of money to not even necessarily produce the podcast, but to just keep the podcast available. And yes, everything is fucking getting worse until it gets better. If it's $5 every fucking 6 months, if it's $5 every year, some people are doing $5 a month, minus 10, so that turns out to like $50 if you're a member per year. And at that point, you get like request episodes, etc. The idea is like, we appreciate what you do. We get it. It's fucking rough out there. It's rough in here. But that is the actual, those are the results of you contributing to our show, is that we get to use that money to, number one, continue to have a platform so that the archive, so 10 years worth of shit is out there for you guys to listen to however many times you want. And we can continue to bring these episodes and these good times to you all. Thank you very much. Till next time, stay alive.